Hello, everyone. So we have a minute before we get started. Um, we have some questions here for Icebreaker. I'm already seeing some answers in the chat. If you can add your answer to the question, we really appreciate it. So what comes to your mind when you think about data? What comes to your mind when you think about science itself? Then what comes to your mind when you think about data science? This is going to guide our discussion for today and this workshop, and I'm really excited to have you here. All right, so I'm just going to take some of the answers that I'm seeing in the chat box. So Kavi Priya said, it's data is a collection of information, and Elidio also said data includes information presented as numbers, which I totally agree with. Science is how a thing or a theory exists, and a principle for analysis as well. And finally, we also have data science as a discussion of how you get analysis from data or how you analyze data, right? And this is a general discussion, it seems, for everyone in the chat. And that's really useful in terms of as we begin. So today's session is going to be called Think Like a Data Scientist. So it's basically a crash course into data science and still idea of solving societal problem using data science and AI. My name is Dotun, and I'm the CEO of Dotun Data. And I think with everything going on in the world, it's very pivotal that we think about how data is being used and also how insights is being drawn from data. And that's what motivated this session. So let's go into it. So what is data science? Well, data science uses scientific methods, processes, algorithms, and systems to extract knowledge. So at the end of the day, the goal here is to be able to extract some form of knowledge and understanding. Like everyone said in the chat box, right? It's a way to draw insight from data, right? But there are varying forms of data. There's structural and unstructured data. And data science is a process. It's a science, but it's also an art, right? It's an art of uncovering insight. So the more experience or the more skill sets you gain in the data science analysis, you get better at being able to uncover insights and trends. So my goal for today is to be able to take you all through this journey of a data science project and see the different steps that is taken. And hopefully from there, you can begin your own data journey. So like I said, data science is an interdisciplinary field, right? And so it crosses across different disciplines. So it includes computer science, it includes machine learning, it includes statistics, it includes data visualization as well, and also so many other areas, right? There's communication skills when you're presenting to people and discussing about your ideas, and that is also very relevant. So data science is applied in a variety of fields and many industries, right? So it's applied clearly in social impact, which is what we'll be talking about today. It's applied in finance, in social media analytics, in retail, so recommendation of targets or like wherever you're shopping online. It's used a lot in sport analytics. So if you're watching soccer, basketball, or so many other sports, it's used in healthcare. So with the whole pandemic going on right now, data analysis and data science and machine learning have played a huge and important role to help people. So for today, though, we'll be looking specifically at data science and social impact. So what we're going to be trying to do is using data to predict human rights violations. And this is actually a real life project done by Amnesty International, and we'll go into that. So we're going to be looking at this different steps. I'm just going to give you a big overview so you can see what is going on. And from there, we're actually going to drill into each one of these steps. So there's problem formulation, there's data collection and storage. Then you have your data preprocessing. Then you have your machine learning modeling and machine learning analysis. And from there, you get your end results and you present those end results. So for today's problem statement, like I said, we're trying to predict human rights violations. And it was a real project and it still exists by Amnesty International. So looking at problem formulation, which is the first step, problem formulation is the starting point for any data science project. Because at the end of the day, right, you're trying to solve a problem whenever you begin your data analysis or your data science steps, right? And it's important for that problem to be very specific, appropriate, and thorough. You're trying to ask a specific question and not just a generic, broad question. And so without a comprehensive problem definition, finding a solution is difficult because you're just going to be going everywhere and like wandering around without being very direct. So we're going to have our first breakout. And in this breakout, we are going to be asking this question: what problems are you trying to solve? And how can data be helpful in solving them? And we're going to spend a few minutes in your breakout group having this discussion so that you guys can actually go through this step with us as we present as well. Thank you for everyone who joined back. So we're going to keep this going. So going forward, we're going to look at how the problem formulation actually operated in the problem that we're discussing about here. And so in the human rights violation, the question they were trying to ask here is, can we use past alert information to be able to predict human rights violations? And can this be used to identify high-risk situations and then send resources to solve them? And so the goal of this is to actually prevent future catastrophes and save lives by recognizing patterns of violations in different regions. So from going from the problem formulation, we then move to the data collection and the storage phase. And in this phase, this is the process of retrieving data for analysis. And so the data can be gotten from reputable organizations like the World Bank, UN Data, Kaggle, or you can actually create your own data collection process. So by like doing online surveys, by going to social media and collecting information from there. And from there, this data is then plotted to properly describe relationships between them, because this is very important in being able to see our results. So in the human rights violation case that we're looking at here, the data was actually provided by Amnesty International, and it was collected for over 30 years. And so this is 30 years of human rights violation of alerts and reports that have been collected. And there are about 1.4 million lines of data and about 11,000 files, which is a lot of information to process. So after the data collection step, we then go into about 1.4 million lines of data. So after the next slide. So after the data collection step, we go into data preprocessing. And in the data preprocessing stage, this is the process that is taken before going into our machine learning model. So usually when data is collected, there might be a lot of information that is missing, such as rows and columns, or there might be some wrongly imputed information. And this type of data is actually described as being messy. It is important that we clean up this information before running our models on them. So we have our next breakout here. So I can see people popping back to the main stage. So if you can include some of your answers in your discussion, that would be nice. So I can see what everyone is thinking before we go into the next steps. So what does messy data mean to you? If anyone can include that in the chat. And what approaches did you use to like take care of those messy data? Because data can be really messy. Okay, so I'll just continue.
Unmute. I'm sorry, I was on mute. I was trying to respond to your question, but I was mute. I was just saying that we discussed with Lloyd in our group, and we decided to say any information that is not ready to be used for us is a mess. You have a lot of things in your table, but they're not in format or yet in position for you to immediately use. So that's the messy information for it.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I agree with that exactly. And funny enough, right, like in the data science world and the data science stuff, a lot of time is actually spent cleaning data, right? Like people think that like the time you spend is probably on your analysis and like writing all that code. But because of humans are the ones dealing with data, and we have very creative ways of inputting data and including the information that we want to, what ends up happening is that the data set, when it comes to the data scientist or the data analyst, is such it's in a format that like they have to do a lot of extra work to be able to get that going. So thank you for that. And yeah, there's so many approaches that can be taken in terms of cleaning data sets. So for this human rights violation case, in terms of pre-processing the data, they actually found volunteers to identify critical information from the data, right? So we mentioned that there were about 11,000 files, and you should know that like not all of those 11,000 files included critical information, or they were a mix of different information. So volunteers were identified to get critical information from the data, and that data was cleaned to identify the type of alerts that was being reported. And those alerts could include assault, death by execution, multiple attempts. So before now including that into the machine learning model. So that takes us to the cool fancy part of the data science step, which is the machine learning modeling. So whenever people are using all the buzzwords, the AI, the models, and all of that stuff, this is what you're talking about. But you should know that like the first three steps are equally as important before the machine learning fancy step, because without a clean data set, as Elidio mentioned, without a clean or like a useful data, whatever you're including into this model is just garbage, right? And it doesn't really matter in the long run. So, like I said, right, in the machine learning modeling step, data is passed into these algorithms to provide insights. And these algorithms are models, right? And they're sort of like automated models. They use data to train themselves. So the more data they get, or let me caveat that as the more good data they get, the better they become at like providing valuable insights. So I didn't know how technical the audience was going to be. And so I wanted to make sure that like for the technical people in the room, I mentioned this. And if you're not too technical or you don't really care about the technicality of things, this doesn't really matter as much, but it's important to also discuss about it. So in terms of machine learning algorithms, there are two major algorithms that we're going to look at. There's the supervised learning and the unsupervised learning. So in the supervised learning case, if you're trying to predict a particular like number, or like if you're trying to predict someone's salary, you use supervised learning. If you're trying to predict a yes or no case, you also use supervised learning, and there are specific types there. And in unsupervised learning, you're looking at groupings of data information to be able to provide insights for your audience or for your particular customer. So in this case, the model was developed to identify very high-risk situations right? So at the end of the day, Amnesty International as an organization cannot be everywhere at the time. So they have to prioritize the kind of situation they target. And it helped the organization to identify cases that were going to result into executions, like killing of people, and be able to prepare for that. And it also predicted which incident was going to escalate to a crisis point in those countries, and so that the resources could be targeted to solving the solutions. And so after the machine learning modeling step, the final step here we go into is presenting our end results and looking at the insight we actually got from this information, right? And I'll say something before jumping into the end result, right? So we've gone through 4 stages, but these 4 stages actually, they could take multiple iterations. They could take different kind of partnerships, different kind of discussions with organizations to be able to get to the step. So it's not just a one straight way that you're like, oh, from problem formulation to the modeling, I'm fine, and like we're going to get this in a day or two and quickly. This could take months to be able to get that information, to be able to clean, to be able to make sure that you're solving the problem and not actually causing more problem. Because there's a tendency for people just to trust the machine learning models and the algorithms without actually understanding the underlying problems that they're trying to solve here. So looking at the end results, right? The goal of any data science project is to be able to communicate impact, right? Like for any real project you're trying to do, and not just doing it for fun, like the end goal is to be able to convince leaders that are going to make decisions and that affect lives to be able to use this data set that you're providing and this insight you're providing. And these results are then used to provide recommendations to implement change, right? At the end of the day, the conference here we're dealing with Our Future, Our Voices, is to be able to implement change in our different communities that we're in, right? And the goal of a data scientist in the social impact space is to ensure that they're communicating properly the results that they've gotten, but also that they're forming the right partnerships with leaders because these decisions are important. So these results are shared through multiple ways, right? Right now I'm presenting to you with a PowerPoint, right? So like a PowerPoint presentation. A lot of people also use different blog posts to have discussions about like the project that they've worked on. Really interesting data visualizations are also key here, right? As you can see, Frankie has included in the chat asking like, what tools do you use to communicate results in your field? Please feel free to share about that because I know there's so many resources out there that can be of help to people as they learn also, but as they also go through their data science step and analysis, right? So right now I'm using a PowerPoint presentation. So making sure you're communicating your ideas and the results to the leaders, that is very important. So with the human rights violation case, right, there was a lot of recommendation to improve the way that the alert process was going about, right? And so what that entailed was the fact that they found, as a result of collecting the data sets, as a result of analyzing the data, is that the process at which they were collecting alert information wasn't actually so great. So they had to improve that process. And they improved their websites and their data collection process. And that also had a huge impact on the kind of data that was being collected. And like I also said, right, yeah, they were trying to predict crises. And so crises were actually accurately predicted to prevent future issues or escalations from happening. And this is very relevant, right? Because this is a specific goal that we are coming to accomplish, right? We created our problem formulation in the beginning, and here we're in the end result. So with every project, right, the question here is asking like, what is the impact have we made? If we can answer our question, then that is great. And if we've not gotten to that stage yet, it's an iterative process, right? So we go back to see if we have to collect more data, if we have to clean up more information, if we have to do more algorithm processing, and that is key. So here's a blog post that was written by the Washington Post on how Amnesty International actually uses big data to predict human rights violation. And this was very big at the time, right? To be able to use machine learning and apply it in such instance to be able to have a positive impact on people's lives. So for us here, we're done, right? So we've been able to go through the problem formulation phase. We've been able to talk about data collection and storage. We'll be able to analyze and pre-process the data that we wanted to by cleaning those data and realizing that most times the information you get is messy and doesn't come complete. We also looked into our machine learning modeling and algorithms. And from there, we discussed about the end results and presentation. So this is very relevant, and I hope you were able to take some meaningful things with you. And before we go on, I wanted to also talk about the really important issue that is going on right now in the world, especially in my country, Nigeria, where we're facing protest. It's the End SARS campaign and protest in Nigeria that tries to address police brutality in Nigeria. So I want to say rest in peace to the victims of End SARS and the protest in Nigeria. Sadly, there was a lot of killings that went on last week. And at Dotun Data, we're actually trying to build the largest database on End SARS incidents. And we're trying to figure out the information that we're collecting, what people are saying, and provide like really important and relevant analysis on this. We've done some preliminary visualizations and analytics, and you can find this in the link in the chat. You can also see our website, endsarsdata.com, where we're just collecting data. And so we're still in the beginning phase, right? We can't tell you anything for sure or what we're going to see at the end, but we're just looking and analyzing the data and collecting information for people. So we've been using Twitter and many online channels to reach out to people to be able to add their information. And people have actually been filling out our surveys and such. So you can take a look at it. If you know anyone that could, that has faced SARS incidents in your country, if you're in Nigeria, you can send this to them, and that would be cool. And also, if you can take a look at the Medium article that we wrote so far, that would also be great. Before we go on, we're also going to have a survey for this session that is going to be sent. So if you can fill out the survey when you're done, we'll really appreciate it. And finally, follow me on all of these platforms if you're on there. We post like really valuable content in the data and the data science space to be able to help people on their data journey. Oh, okay, let's see the question. So what was the main challenge you faced conducting this project? So first of all, I have to say that this project wasn't conducted by me. It was conducted by Amnesty International, right? I don't work for them, but I thought this would be a very great use case to describe to this audience, especially everyone in the social impact phase. Right now, at least I'm working on a similar project that is related to what Amnesty International is with the End SARS collection. And what I would say is really challenging is that like being able to find people that would fill out your survey, first of all, but also making sure you're asking questions that are very like important and very key, right? So like you collect survey information, right? You have an idea in your mind, but what you start realizing as you're collecting this information is that like some other people have other experiences that you've not even thought about. So what was really great for me, especially in this social media age, was I put this survey online, shared out there, then people start commenting, sending in links like, oh, you should include a link that says, can you include the police officer's name, right? Because I didn't think about that, right? So to see that level of collaboration worldwide was really key. And that was really helpful in collecting the information so far. But it's still a challenge, right? Because I know like I'm going to deal with a lot of messy information, but I'm excited for that. That keeps my juice running, so it's good. So we have 2 more minutes. We'll take one more question if there's anyone. But if not, it's been great having everyone here. And I'm really glad that you're thinking about data in your day-to-day work, wherever you are. And in terms of also using it in social impact. So I think data analysis, machine learning can play a very important role here to be able to help a lot of people in the world to be able to solve like really pertinent problems. And it's a learning step for us, right? The more data we collect, the more truthful information that we collect, the more we can produce outputs that helps a lot of people. So that is the end goal for us, at least for now. And I'm so excited for everyone in this space. Well, follow me on all of the social media platforms if there's no other question. I really appreciate it. It's 8:40 now. So it's exactly 40 minutes. And thank you again, and have a good day, everyone.